Thanks for watching Matthew's Daniel Atlantic Weather Briefing. I'm meteorologist Gonzalo Agudelo. Still covering the tropics today. We still have 3 active systems going on in the Atlantic right now with another invest going on. We're going to talk about that right now. All right, let's take a look at Hurricane Gaston right now. Gaston currently located around 33.4 north, 50.2 west. It's located about 850 miles east of Bermuda right now. You can take a look at the satellite presentation right now, and it has a pretty massive eye. The satellite presentation is still outstanding. Gaston has been looking very, very well on satellite imagery over the past few days. Still Category 3 major hurricane right now with winds currently at about 105 knots. It's really been maintaining a very well intensity. Gaston is still over warm waters. The shear currently is still pretty favorable. As Gaston continues to track to the northeast or east-northeast, the wind shear is expected to increase just a little bit over the next day or two, and consequently after that, slight weakening is anticipated during that time. Afterwards, though, Gaston's going to be moving into a little bit higher latitudes, more colder waters, so that's what we could probably expect from Gaston. It's going to start being weakening sooner than later, really. You can take a look at that right there. You can see Gaston just moving into the central Atlantic right now. There's colder waters over in this area, and there's also a trough of low pressure that you can kind of see a little bit well just to its north, and Gaston's actually going to be absorbing into that. You can kind of see the outflow of Gaston to the northeast interacting with this area of low pressure, and as Gaston continues to track that way, it's going to finally be completely engulfed in this area of low pressure and finally dissipate in the long range, probably in the next, by the end of the, what is today? Today's Wednesday, probably in the next 5 or 6 days, we'll see Gaston fully dissipated by then, but it's looking pretty well right now. It's got a really large eye, and the strongest storm of the season. However, it's not been any threat to any landmass, so that's a good thing with Gaston, because you can imagine if something like that made landfall, that would be a pretty catastrophic and devastating event. Next storm we're talking about is Tropical Depression 8. Tropical Depression 8 is just off the coast of North Carolina right now. It's seen by this little blip of convection. Let's take a closer look at this system right now, and you can see it pretty well right here on satellite imagery. It was expected that the system was probably going to intensify a little bit sooner, but it actually got affected by some westerly wind shear, so a lot of winds that are coming from the west in association with a broad area of low pressure coming through, and that's just been pushing the system to the west. And it probably means that the center of circulation is a little bit separated from the main area of convection that we see. You can kind of see once the sun is coming up now, the center of circulation is a little bit just to the west of the main area of convection. So it's still a little bit disassociated, but as the system continues to track to the northeast, we might still see some strengthening. We might see a little bit of development into a tropical storm, but it's going to be very short-lived if that does happen, and it would be a weak tropical storm at best, honestly. So not really much to talk about with the system. There weren't really any impacts to the coastal North Carolina region, except for maybe some riptides. We have a lot of winds coming from the west, so that's the riptide threat is probably really real at the moment, and that's something that people have to really follow and watch out over there. Finally, the last active system that we're going to talk about that's a little bit more relevant in the Gulf of Mexico now, Tropical Depression 9. Tropical Depression 9, you can see it on satellite imagery right here. It's actually been really blowing up in terms of convection. It's really been firing up, especially close to the center. That was the main thing. That was the problem for this system. The system would have some really nice showers and thunderstorms blowing up, but it would be removed from the center, so it was not vertically stacked. It was very tilted. When you have a tilted system like that, it's very hard for it to really organize itself, and if it does, it takes a while for that to happen. So that's really what we've been seeing. So we see a lot more convection firing up near the center or over the center. We see a lot of shear that's a little bit favorable in this sense. You can kind of see this cloud feature, it's kind of moving towards the north. So we have some southerly shear and some southwesterly shear, as you can see here. And when you have southwesterly shear, for sometimes, particularly in this case, it can actually be favorable for the system because you have a lot of outflow. So when you have a lot of outflow in this region, that means that it helps to increase rising air towards the center. So we could probably expect some strengthening over the next couple days with the system. The system's still expected to make a turn to the northwest and north probably today. It's actually kind of been meandering over the past 12 hours or so. We still expect the system to take a turn to the northeast, as you can see here on the NHC official track right now. Main concerns are parts of Panhandle of Florida as well as Big Bend of Florida. The intensity of the system, though, is still relatively unknown in terms of when it's expected to make landfall. We can take a look at some of the intensity guidance. Most of them still have some general intensification to a moderate, if not strong, tropical storm. Some of them have it as a hurricane during landfall. Really, regardless, though, the system will be a threat. Once you have a weak Category 1 system or a strong tropical storm, there's really not too much difference in terms of wind speed intensity, but we're going to still have a lot of winds that are going to be pushing towards the Big Bend of Florida, Panhandle of Florida, lots of southwesterly winds. So surge is a thing that we're going to have to really take into consideration here. It's going to be a big rainmaker, so parts of Florida Panhandle, Big Bend of Florida could probably expect heavy amounts of rain, flash flooding possible over in this area. It's very easy for this area to flood during these kind of conditions. Once the system crosses over, which we could expect that to happen around Thursday, so tomorrow or tomorrow night, maybe early Friday, it will be moving again into somewhat more favorable environment. So it's not going to be over once it crosses over Florida. We still have Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina to worry about, because if it moves a little bit over water over this area, the waters are a little bit warm there. So we might still see some intensification of the system, or at least a system that retains its intensity during that time. So we still might see some impacts to the southeast United States as the system continues to track to the northeast. That's something that we're going to have to continue to watch out for as well, and we will do that. So that's something that we'll continue to monitor. So overall, Gaston, very impressive. Cat 3, major hurricane, not a threat to the United States. TD8 right now, not looking very well in satellite presentation, and is already moving to the northeast. Not really any threats to land. We might see a little bit of intensification to a tropical storm, but I wouldn't hold my breath. And then we have Tropical Depression 9. Tropical Depression 9 has now moved into the eastern Gulf. It's going to make a turn to the north relatively soon, probably in the next day or so, and we could expect some modest intensification. So we're going to have to really watch out for the system, okay? So we'll do that. Other than that, we also have an Invest that just moved off the coast of Africa. It's a pretty strong tropical wave. There's a moderate chance for the system to intensify into a tropical depression or tropical storm in the next 5 days. I give that about a 40% chance as it continues to track to the west. We'll follow that though. Right now the conditions are right. The steering patterns, you can kind of see some high pressure some clockwise motion right now would steer the system pretty due west right now. So we'll continue to follow this Invest for the next several days as it continues tracking to the west. We'll continue to follow the weather, though. That's it for now. If you have any questions or would like to see another area included in our global weather briefing, please email us at weather@mattdan.com. Thanks, and stay tuned tomorrow for our next update on the Atlantic.